Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome back to our virtual living room of Under His Construction for another great episode. I am your host, Cassandra Marie. I am still here rocking and rolling with you, and I thank you for joining us on this evening. For all of you, this is your first time here. Under His Construction is a Christian-based platform where we have real conversation and we invite real people to talk about the real challenges that face our daily living. Challenges that impact our spiritual living. We want to encourage you in all aspects of life. Through love, through compassion, and through sincerity. We want to build each other up. That is our mission here under His Construction, to build each other up, because unity speaks, unity shouts that we just simply do it better together. So get ready and join us as we go on another day's journey under His construction.
Work on me, fix everything, make me over head to toe if necessary. Moving forward kind of frightens me, but it's the only way to get the best out of my life. So I try to strip the mask off, try my best to release all of me to this process of newness, reinvention and grooming. The power within, I might win, I just might win. I am under construction.
Welcome back. And once again, I am still your girl, Cassandra Marie, your host for this evening on Under His Construction. Thank you so much for joining us. Right there, if you're on Facebook in the comment line, we welcome you. We want you to join us in the conversation. You could welcome to sit back and listen, but we welcome you to join us in the conversation by simply putting your comments or your questions right there in the comment line. If you are viewing with us through YouTube, you have a chat line right there. We welcome you to join us. Let me know you there so I can acknowledge you and shout you out and send you a little love just from me to you. So thank you all once again for joining us. And listen, have you ever just wondered why is it that we don't learn our lesson the first time? Like, why does it take several times for us to do things before we actually get a clue or learn what God is trying to teach us? Well, today we're going to talk about recidivism, talking about repeat offenders, repeat felony offenders. And to do that, we are here to welcome Moswen Haasan Stephens, breaking the chains of the prison doors. Moswen, welcome to the living room of Under His Construction.
Thank you so
Welcome,
much,
my brother.
Marie. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for, allowing me to use your platform to just, share my story. I can understand how it's tough to be in a situation and, trying to figure it out. So, I really appreciate you allowing me to do this because this is kind of my way of giving back.
Well, I think, you answered my first question, why you want to share the story. So I was honored to have you here. I heard about your story. I knew about your story, and I thought it was a story of deliverance, a story of God's love, a story that speaks how God never gives up on us, even when sometimes we don't see the hope for ourselves. God sees the hope in us. He has purpose in us, and He uses us, and He trusts us sometimes with things that just seem so painful. So tell us, what was your felony? First, tell us a little bit about where you come from. Where you come from?
Okay, well, I was born in Trenton, New Jersey. Trenton, New Jersey, Mercer County. So,
well, as you know, and I'm gonna go ahead and say, me and Moswen are a family. We are related, so we are both from New Jersey. And once again, I thank you for trusting me with your story. And as Moswens were born right in a two-family household, mother and father?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
And how
ma'am.
many siblings?
It was, oh man, it was, my dad had, my mother, it was 5 of us. It's my brother Kenny, me, my sister Ebony, Larry Jr., and then it was Timothy, the youngest. But my dad did have kids from other marriages. So, and he was a guy, he kept us close. So I grew up closely with my sister April, my brother Reggie, my brother Kevin. He kept everybody close. So, I was around them a lot. My sister D. We all, it was a nucleus of family that we came together, and so he did do that. So I come from a large family on that aspect.
So you come from a large family. Now, where do you fit in the line of the family? The oldest, the second to the oldest, the youngest? Where do you fall in?
When you count everybody, I'm right in the middle. I'm right in the middle. You know what I mean? So I was my mom and dad, they actually met in New Brunswick, New Jersey. So I guess that's where my original roots come from. And they met there. That's where my mother was living at the time. And so I was the first child, of that relationship.
Of
So
that relationship?
yeah, so I'm kind of big brother, younger brother, you know what I mean? Because I had older brothers and sisters, but I'm the oldest of a crew of me, and there's 4 other siblings up under me.
So you're the second oldest of your mother children, but
Right.
combined, you kind of fall in the middle between the
Right,
two
yeah.
of
When you
you
combine
children.
this, everything, I'm right in the middle. So.
You kind of fall in the middle. So it sounds like you grew up in a happy home. It was a lot of you guys. I'm sure y'all had fun family times. What was the average day like? Was it fun in the house for you all?
Yeah, it was fun for me. I felt like it was as like in the childhood I never really missed out on things. I had both parents in the household, which was now has become a very rare thing. But at that time, both parents, both loving parents. We all work on being, but I didn't never see it as anything different than loving parents. So, I came from loving parents. On my mother's side, I had very strong women on that side, a lot of aunts, a couple of uncles, but a lot of aunts. So I grew up with a strong belief in, women, doing great. So, I got that. And then, my dad, he was the only child. So that gave you a kind of different mix, but, it was close. It was close on both sides. So.
Was it a spiritual home? Did you talk about God in your home?
Oh yes, my mother. She was super spiritual. She
She's a
had us
woman
in
of
church.
God.
Yeah, she was. She had us in church at an early age. What I mean. And this, I was kind of one of those types that, I remember the first sermon that I actually paid attention to, and that kind of set with me. And it was on Revelation, the Mark of the Beast.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really hear talk of that pretty much in churches as much, but it's one that always sits, what I mean? Because that's the first one I remember as a kid, what I mean? Just that a whole sermon. Because, most, I remember this, what I mean? So it's Abraham, all the tidbits everyone knows, but the first sermon that I paid attention to and remembered a lot of what was being said was, what I mean? It was Revelation. It was the Mark of the Beast.
Why do you think that sermon in particular resonated with you so much?
I don't know. I think it kind of, for some reason, it kind of played into my personality, because a lot of things that I do, I kind of, I stay a realist about a lot of stuff, so I don't, and how times go, looking to future, not thinking about what's going on now and what may be going on in the future. So I don't know, but it was just always an important sermon that sat with me, and I just remember it, and it always, it just always stayed important to me. So,
So It sounds like you grew up in a nice family environment. God was in the mix. God was definitely in the house with your parents and with your family. So you shared with us that out of you, how old now?
45 years old.
So you're 45 years old. And out of those 45 years, how much time have you spent giving to the state institutions?
I've given the Georgia State institutions 15 plus years of doing time.
So out of that family dynamic, that loving dynamic family household, how did you go from there to becoming starting your criminal history? What happened? What took place?
I kind of, while I share like the history of like I moved from Trenton, New Jersey. My parents are both from the South. My mother's from Mississippi. My dad's from Macon, Georgia. And, like I say that, during those times, a lot of people migrated up north because of, they got in troubles because the South was, Jim Crow South, kind
Okay.
of still where my
Yeah.
parents grew up. So, so I was in Jersey until like the age of 14. So I moved from there to down south Macon, Georgia, which is a totally different environment for a kid that knows nothing but how things are done up north to the south. So it was a transition. It was a lot of stuff going on within my family with my mom and my dad, but at the time I didn't really know like what it was. All we knew we was supposed to come in for a visit. The visit turned into a long-term stay. So over, that's kind of the story of how it began. And when I came here, it was a lot of stuff going on that then I didn't really know, and it kind of affected like how I moved forward because my dad was the only child, and he was coddled and treated as that way. So it was different for us to be here full time and how they treated him different from what I was used to seeing. So, in the long run, what kept me in the circle of this street life and criminal was unresolved issues with that part of my life, which I hadn't really got answers to around to understand exactly what was going on at that time until later on in my life.
So you're 14 years old, you go into the South for a family visit, what you thought was a family visit, and
Right.
end up being a permanent relocation.
Right.
I can't imagine. So you have your life, what you in about ninth grade there?
Well, actually, when I moved, I was I was right in the 7th grade, like in the middle of the 7th grade at that time. So I might have came out. So was it?
So you was probably
Oh,
around
maybe,
12. Yeah, you was probably around 12 or 13 or so.
Yeah, I had to be. I might have been like 13 when we came out because I was like I say I had did, but I was also a year behind, so I was a little bit older for some reason. My mom said I wasn't progressing like I should have, and she kept me back a year, so I was kind of behind. So probably was about 13 then.
But I remember you as a smart little dude. I remember your dad had a restaurant. He was a restaurant owner. And I remember he had a seafood restaurant, and you used to be up there flipping the fish and cutting the fish and battering up the fish. I remember you as Mushman working at the seafood restaurant.
It was, and that's always was in me, a hard worker. I got that from when I was young. And you know what I mean? And like when I really tell my story, they try to understand like how did I go from a kid that grew up with both his parents, loving family, all that support, to somebody that dedicated so much time to the streets. That's usually for people that don't really have that kind of support. But it was just, you can get caught up in, like, sometimes you have unresolved issues with things mentally.
Well, I always say crime is not prejudice. Crime is available to everybody. I don't care if you're rich, poor, or whatever. But I hear what you're saying. Most people, I guess the average, if you want to look at it socially like that, people who grow up, you would think with two-family household, what appears to be a happy family. Like, what went wrong? What happened inside of you? So when that change took place, and did you all move to Georgia as a family? Or did some of you go and some of you stayed?
No, well, actually, out of my 5 children, my other brother Kenny, he's actually 9 years older than me. So just me, my sister Ebony, my brother Larry Jr. and Timothy, which was the ages were 13, 11. What it was 13, 11.
So it was basically
5. It was, it was steps. So all of us we actually got on a train by ourselves, and I was responsible for making sure everybody was okay from Trenton, New Jersey, all the way to Macon, Georgia. Well, Atlanta, Georgia.
So even at that age, you was put into a role of responsibility.
Responsibility, exactly. So that kind of, so I guess when I got here, I wanted to feel like I wanted to make sure everybody was good, because the environment here. My dad was here. He was a great person. I always respected him to the utmost. But he was the only child, and it reflected in how he dealt with us. So we went through a lot, being torn from a family that was together, and and you seeing both of your parents, to your mom's this way, your dad's this way, and you really don't know what's happening. You don't know, like, you ain't seen no fight, you ain't seen no argument. All you know is one day you come home, your dad's not there, he ain't been there for a while. You're like, what's going on? Your mom's really not saying nothing. She seems to be in a point of depression, and then you go visit and you don't come back, and you're not really
never come back to mom.
Right, and because as children, you're always gonna have this special attachment to your mother. Even though I had both of my parents, you had that attachment, and it was like, why we can't go back. I never got an explanation of why we couldn't go back. It's just like, can't go back.
So you growing up, you seem to have a reasonable, normal childhood. All of a sudden, you're planning to go to the South to visit your dad's side of the family. Mom stayed, and you guys never come back to mom. You're put in a position of adult responsibilities to look after your younger siblings, but you were just a normal kid. So you get into the South in this foreign land. And I know about a little something about that, because I come from New Jersey to the South, and I consider it a foreign land, because the culture is totally different. You're in a different type of environment in the household. We're going from a two-family parent to now just this one parent family, parenting, and like, what's going on? What's going on? Is that when you begin to become attracted to the streets?
Right. Cause see, I go from this is the 90s, so I go from a kid, like, all my friends when I left, all my friends were people that I knew for a while. We went through a lot. And, it was different. It was friendly in the South. So now I've never been the type that couldn't make friends, but it was different than how you made friends. Like, me and all my friends, we got to fighting, but that was just how it was. And that's what drawed our closeness. And so now I moved to the South, and all of these people are very friendly. So you get to know a lot of people in a different environment, and and this is the height of, I feel like, the crack epidemic. So you're exposed to seeing a lot. Like when I was in Jersey, there was a lot that went on, but you didn't really see it as much. It was different, but it
wasn't at your front door.
Yeah, it wasn't really at your front door. You understand, it was there, but you didn't really see it. Like, they moved different. And so when you came here, a lot of guys were like, yeah, I got this. And so, it was just like, okay. And I say I was probably here like 2 years. First, when I first came, I was on a part of Macon. It was on the South side. It was family hotel. It was different. Then I moved to a side of town it was in West Macon. Now there, the guys were different. Far as most of the guys I befriended there were guys that hustle, that had a pocket full of money. I'm just, I just so happen to just befriend these guys, and I ain't looking like now. Oh, those guys got the money. Let me befriend them. It's just this so happened what happened. So when I moved there and befriended these guys, it just, wasn't really no pressure to be this or that, but I'm watching how they going to school, real fly, pocket full of money. A lot of them driving to school, just like, hey, you know what I mean? So I got into doing the same things.
Which was drug dealing.
It was like at an early age. And it was like and then when I started doing it, it was like fast. At first I wasn't really into it. My dad, he ran a construction company. So we, kind of worked. And I used to go on job site with him and work but at the time, my dad, he really kind of dropped the ball on. He felt like because I was his son, he was taking care of me, that I should work for free, basically. Instead of giving me the opportunity or showing me that, hey, son, hard work pays. Instead of paying me just like you pay Joe Blow that got to take care of his family, pay my son the same way to show him that, to give him a bigger lesson. Me and him later had a conversation about it. I said, man, really, you the reason why I sell drugs. I said, man, when I was younger, because I said I used to be on them job sites, and you chose not to pay me, and to feel like, to never show me the example of, son, hard work pays off.
So your answer to that was to start selling drugs and making your own money.
Right. So I could, it wasn't about, it was just, just to be decent. And once it grabbed me, it was, it took full control. It just, it spins all out. It's like using drugs. It's almost like an addiction. Because, when you start anything, when there's no difference in a drug dealer that sells them to the people than the people that use them. There's no difference. It's just looked at differently as far as like maybe his appearance may be different. That's the only thing you can take. But both parties are sacrificing how their loved ones, the effect, how you're affected by your loved ones. You don't really care about them as much because it's all about chasing the dollar. Because I went years without even knowing if some of my was okay, not even talking to them, and it didn't even affect me in a way to say, hey, let me check up on, or let me, and it just years went by.
So when you start
how caught up I was.
When you start dealing drugs, you're saying it's the same as start using. After that first blast, you hook. So after that first 100 or that first yard or that first 1,000, you hooked, but you're hooked on the money.
You gonna chase it, and you don't care nothing about it. People may say, I didn't really have a great care for my family, a great care for even my kids. Later on at that time when I had kids, I didn't really care for none of the things that should have been important to me as a young kid. I really didn't. It wasn't like I was saying bump them, but that was my love. I didn't really have a care for a woman, really. It was go get the money before I really had to deal with that. I dealt with it whenever it was, but I didn't really. That's what my love, and it was a love affair that went on for a long time, up until just recently. So up until I did this last bid.
It sounded like money became your God almost.
It was that's exactly how it was. It's no, you couldn't rationalize it to say, well, I'm just gonna get this little bit. It was a love. It was a high for me. For people to call my phone and need something, it was a high.
And how did you feel when you was able to supply what they needed?
I felt like a king. I felt like I was on top of the world.
Wow.
So that's what was driving me. And and it was, when I did this time, I had to sit back and analyze, like, man, what is it why this is not my purpose. I know God did not place me on this earth to be a professional drug dealer or so-called I mean, some people might categorize, but it's as a drug dealer.
You
I
know
know that's
that's
not.
not what God purposed you to
Yeah, I
do.
know that that's not what my purpose is. So I'm like, purpose got to be something. And I started to understand. Like I like, man, I really don't care that much about my family if I'm risking because you doing time, they supporting you, and then you get back out and you tell yourself that you can actually try it this way and it'll work.
And this happens all the time, even in the church. Parents raise their children in the church. They try to give them the best life they know how, give them the best values. And somehow when they get of an age of accountability, start making decisions different from what they were taught and how they were raised, because of whatever is lying within. Because basically, I'm just calling it what it is. It's the devil, is sin that's attracting you. And let me tell you, sin can be very attractive and very fun. I know for myself, I spent 15 years in heroin and cocaine addiction. So I know a little bit something about addiction and being drawn into something that's more greater and powerful than you, and feeling like you think you want to have control, but you see you have lost control, but you somehow
Right.
still think that you can manage this thing because you think you're smart enough to do that, but next thing you know, it's out of control. And you before this person in this black robe and this hammer giving you how much time on your first conviction?
My first conviction, I was sentenced to 15 years, and I served 6 of those 15.
At what age?
At 19 years old.
At 19 years old, you were convicted of 15 years
Right. 15.
because because the money had become your God.
Right.
So, what was your father, or were you in communication with your mother? I understand she wasn't living down there, but were you in communication with her at all during this time, or?
No, not really, because whatever what was going on, I'm not really sure. Like that secret, my dad took to the grave with him. Like actually, what was going on? Later on in life, I put bits and pieces together and then kind of constructed a story. What was okay? Me and my mother, we had a conversation about it, and that was one of the demons I was battling with. But so I did 6 years off of that bid.
And you came out, and during that 6 years, was there any rehabilitation? Did you think like, I'm done with this, I'm not going to do this anymore? Like, what was you thinking during that time that you were going to do when you came out, that you were going to do
Actually,
differently, I should say?
I knew it would be back to it would probably be. I never just gave up on saying, "Oh, I ain't gonna sell drugs no more."
Oh, you never surrendered. You didn't surrender.
No, I didn't surrender that time. I didn't surrender.
Mhm.
And, I had to do. Once I did that bid, I did another bid. Still hadn't surrendered. I didn't really surrender until this bid. So it's 3 bids in, man. I say. So I did the 6 years. I went to a
You did
halfway
the
house.
6 years and you came out. Was there any re-entry programs or anything that was available to you?
Yeah,
For the
actually,
challenges when you came
I
out?
went to a transitional center. I went to a
You went to a
transitional
transitional
center,
center.
and
Okay.
it was I was able. I got a job. I was in Atlanta though. I got a job. I actually said I wanted to stay in Atlanta, but it didn't work out for me to stay in Atlanta. But when I got out, I stayed clean. I didn't mess with the streets. That went on for about 3 years. I got in a bad relationship, and the combination of the bad relationship triggered me back to the streets. Also, it was an incident that plus my me and my dad. I had been working with him. I was doing good. I hadn't hustled. I had kind of stayed away from it, and we was doing good in the construction thing. I had developed some skills while I was in there. I took some trades. I didn't just waste my time, just do the whole 6 years. And so I actually went to a place that had trades. And I was at a camp that was most people thought would be a nice camp to be at. But I told them, I said, man, look, I got too much time. I cannot be here. Please send me somewhere where I can actually learn something. I remember the counselor's name was Salad. You know, if he's watching out there. Thank you, Mr. Salad. I appreciate you for that was the first person to set me on the right track. So he actually put me in for this transfer. It was like a special transfer. So I went to this camp, took up some trades, so I had learned some skills. When I got out, I was actually able to use those skills to actually earn money. But the relationship with me and my dad crumbled due to, he was just, he in a sense, he couldn't really help it. He was just always himself. My dad was, in a lot of ways, selfish, but he couldn't help it because he was the only child. So he wasn't used to sharing. So he had a selfish demeanor. He was a very smart man, a man I love, respected. I respect him a whole lot more. Not to say nothing bad, but everybody has their own flaws, and that's what his was. He was selfish.
Did he support you or enable you?
He most definitely. When I did those bids, he supported me lightly. I say he really didn't support me. I kind of figured it out. It was my family from Jersey that really kind of. Well, I had a partner of mine. I was doing my first bid. I was doing what I could to survive the short. I was a young guy. I wasn't really asking nobody for nothing. But a partner of mine that I used to run with in the street.
He sold drugs too?
Yeah, and he had kind of made a big come up. He went from being a guy that was, well, anyway, he sent me like $2,000 through I used to date his cousin. So he sent me some money. And then I got in touch with my family from up north, my grandmother and all them, and they felt like my dad was at big fault with why I was there. And which they was probably right about some of that, but it was most of it was on me. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody forced me to do nothing, but they wanted to support me. So, they helped me. So I got through that bid that way. And, that worked out. So he was kind of, I would say, I think he wanted to support me more, but he was more of an enabler because if I got off on the wrong track, he never really set me down and was like, hey, boy, you can't do this and this and this and this. He's just like, he do what he doing.
So were you ever affected by drugs in any kind of way? Like, was drug using in your family any kind of way? Did you see people using drugs? Or
my dad, he pretty much, from what I've gathered and just talking to other people, he was pretty he used a lot of drugs, and I was told, I'm not sure how true this was, that's why my dad left Jersey and came back to Georgia, because he was actually had got hooked on crack cocaine real bad, and he was going down, and some family members like, look, man, with what Larry got going on, and with they were saying my mother wasn't of no help, he gonna get worse and something gonna bad happen. Y'all need to get him. So my grandparents came and got him and moved him to Georgia. So I kind of believe that story because that's probably why my grandmother met. I loved them to death, you know what I mean? Because I was never raised to disrespect anybody around me. And I know they genuinely had love, but that's probably why it was a lot of friction and they had such ill feelings towards me and my other sisters.
You talking about your grandparents on your father's side?
Yeah. They really didn't treat us the same as they treated the rest of the grandkids. The rest of the kids. The crew that my grandmother's. I know she didn't like my mother for whatever reason they had gone. So when we came here, we wasn't treated great at all.
So wow, this must have been really tough for you. Put up the picture of him in that sophomore picture. You was about 15 years old. We had a picture of you about 15 years old. Can you put that up? No, the picture of him about 15 years old.
It's a high school
That
year,
picture, yeah, it's a high school yearbook picture.
and that
And,
was
and you about 15 years old and you going through high school and then you get, your father was trying to recover from this crack addiction, starting his life over. And like I said, I spent 15 years in addiction too. So I know trying to live life without the use of drugs was pretty hard.
right.
It was something foreign. It was something foreign. It's like learning how to live all over again. Then you have these kids that you have to learn how to parent to at the same time without this use of drugs. So I can imagine it was pretty tough for him as well. But for you guys, you being like the oldest in the family, taking on this big brother parent role almost to your siblings, I'm sure they probably was looking up to you as a big brother. I heard you said you had one sister, so her being the only girl, it must have been difficult for her because who did she have in the house with all these men,
Yeah, she
all
caught
these boys?
yeah, and then she went through it. She caught like she had the roughest time. You know what I mean? And later on down the line, me and her had a serious conversation. I actually convinced her. She actually moved back to Jersey. You know what I mean? And and got a
Trying
better
to find
balance
her
with it.
way.
Yeah. She found her way, and I was telling her, I'm like, man, you need to go up there. We got all these positive women that are doing great. All our aunts there. You know what I mean? I said you need to go there because you wasn't able to find your mojo amongst what was going on here. Because people really don't like. No, I don't really fault my dad, but like I say, people don't understand that we were not treated fairly as kids that's coming to a situation we have no control over. We
And
was
that has to hurt. That has to hurt. You know,
yeah,
my
and I
son
never knew
lost
I
his.
had a lot of pain dealing with that until that's kind of what fueled me to stay like involved in the street. People usually feel like usually guys that levitate to the streets really don't have family, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's what I mean. It was so broken up, and you know what I mean. I never really, like I say, I had to get bits and pieces later on in life, because you really didn't know what was going on. I never really knew what was actually happening, like why I actually came to Jersey. My dad, he died with the secret. He never did say, "Hey, this and this." But my sister, who had a rough time, she kind of got more because she was more questioning than what was going on because she was a girl. Like I say, Matt and them was treating her. She was treating all of us bad, but my temperament was just different. I didn't really let it bother me as
You didn't
much.
show it bothered you.
Yeah, I didn't really show at that time that it bothered me as much. And my other brother, they were so much younger that they didn't really
Feel the
understand it
impact.
either. Yeah, but it impacted everybody. Like right now, everybody as in their adult life has been, I mean, and being that I had addressed mine, like I said, I had a conversation with my mother, and of course, with things like that, nobody's gonna say, yeah, I was a bad parent at that point. I don't expect nobody to say that.
And I don't believe, we do as best we can as parents with what we know.
That's
And
it.
as we grow, we get better, especially if you have another child, you get to have more experience with it. But there's no rule book to come with this. But for me, I found that when I was after coming out of addiction and being delivered, I just apologized to my son because I had a son, one child that went into foster care. The state told me that I was unfit to be a parent, and I was. And there was nobody who was willing to take my son. And he went into foster care for 9 months, and he came out with a lot of anger, those spirits he still battled to this day. At 30 years old. But I just went on and apologized to him, like I'm sorry that took place. I was caught up in a disease of addiction. And I'm sorry that you had to go. Sometimes we need to stop just as parents, stop justifying and giving excuses to your behavior and just hug your child, be like, I'm sorry. Sometimes people just want an apology. Please forgive me. because I didn't know what to do, or I'm sorry I made the wrong decision. Sometimes apology will go a long way. I feel
Right.
like apology will heal some wounds, but it takes courage to apologize and look at yourself in those ways. It
Right.
takes
I had to
courage
do the
to do
same
that.
thing. I had to I had to do that with my kids and my kids' mother because they deserve that. Because like I said, it's no different. The same way you feel like how you was not there and did not do what you needed to do for your kid. Even though I sold drugs, I was in the same boat. I had to make the same apology. I had to do the same thing, and I never even got into drugs. I tried weed. Drugs was never a thing for me. I never really. The only drug I've ever tried is marijuana, and that's been, oh man, it's probably been
Probably some years.
like 90. I probably had some on the weed since like 91. So you know what I mean. That's so that I never had an issue with that. But the same conversation you said you had. I had to have that same conversation because I understand. I became to understand that I owed them that because I wasn't the type of father I needed to be. I wasn't the type of brother. I wasn't the type of parent I needed to be because I had they wasn't first. I had what I mean. I was into this drug life, so they came secondhand. Some people don't want to admit that you wasn't first.
That you didn't
Experience was
put them
first. And that's
first.
what, yeah, and it was just real talk. So I had to come to that real and and let them know that and actually have that apology. And I actually had to sit down and say that to them. Some people, but it's been so long ago, you right now. But stuff don't sit with me. It's therapy for me because it was
Exactly.
helpful for me to move on and get to a better place and know that I addressed it. And you know what I mean? Because it be weighing on you mentally, and you might not think it is, but so I was on a quest to have great conversation, apologize to people, and get an understanding. It wasn't even about getting an understanding on that. It's more about just having a conversation and apologizing for my fault. And if they want to apologize, they can. They didn't have to. It was more for me because I was trying to get myself together where there was nothing holding me back from being a productive citizen. And I know I'm there. I don't even worry about it's not even. I never leave out or the thoughts of, man, maybe I can get a little bit of this. None of that, and none of that resonates with me. I just,
Well, let's go back a little bit because we stopped it like you did. Your first bid was the 6 years. You stayed out for 3 years. So eventually you went back to selling drugs again after the 3 years.
yeah, went
You
back
was
to the
working with
streets.
your dad. You went back. Was the streets a family for you? Is that what drew you back?
Yeah, yeah, because it kind of. I would kind of say it was. It was kind of more of like a high.
It
The
was
high
kind of
of
more.
everything that came with it. That was my vice, really. I didn't really know it to be. What I mean? Some people might think, oh yeah, man, damn drug dealer, that ain't no bad vice, but it is because I mean, you end up
Yeah,
either.
it's
And I was
drugs.
blessed. It was people in my corner praying for me because most people you in jail or in the graveyard. So I
Listen,
landed in jail a bunch of times, but I didn't go to the other place.
yeah,
So
God sparing you for some reason. So
right.
after you did the 6 years and you went back to do and you got your second conviction. How much time was on your second conviction?
Another 15 years because all these times I'm you dealing with trafficking case. I I get charged with 2 kilos of cocaine the first time. The second time I get charged with 250 grams. And so after this time I do 5 years, and I go do the time. I get out.
So
Haven't surrendered.
still
Still,
haven't surrendered, still
still
keeping
haven't
you
surrendered.
could kind of figure this thing out. That's what amazes me about this whole thing. To spend that much time and I thank God, with my rap sheet, I never caught a felony charge, so I never did a state bid, but I've been in jail plenty of times, but it never escalated to a state bid, and I thank God. But my brother-in-law was a kingpin, and I've seen him do the same thing, go in and out of jail. And I watch people as they think they come up with a better plan. Is that the kind of thinking that take place, or you think like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, but then when you get out, things don't line up, so you end right back in it again because you did it the first time, the second time, and then a third time? What was your third conviction?
The third conviction was after I hadn't even been out 2 years this time, because I probably was back hustling 2 months after I was out. So you know what I mean. I didn't get into the scale that I was in the first time or the second time, but I'm still dabbling with it enough, and like sometimes like, man, I ain't got my nerve for that yet. So, but still, I'm hustling.
And even after you, I heard you talk about your relationship, that this drug dealing was your relationship. This was your lover. So you meet a woman who is now your wife. Do we
Right.
have that picture, that middle picture of him and his girlfriend, Sean, who's now his wife, and you meet her, and what happens then when you meet her?
Okay, so I meet her in 2007. That's the same year my dad died. We caught each other. We did. It's a breath of fresh air,
Mhm.
because I could tell out the most it's different than what I've been into. So during this time, this is I got back full-fledged in the hustling. But I didn't lie to her. I shared what I had going on, and
Mhm.
so we ride. I think we together 4 or 5 years. I catch this second trafficking case. Do the bid. She's there with me all the way through the bid. I get out, still haven't surrendered. Some reserve, but I still haven't surrendered, and I'm back into it.
You back into it, and you even got married right after.
Got married. We're trying to, putting things back.
Got married and got this beautiful house, and
I had a lot of things going, man. My kids, I was helping one of my daughters. She was staying with me. She was getting her in school, and really life was actually great. But I still, like I said, I still hadn't surrendered. So I'm really playing around. But it's just I'm dealing, but I ain't dealing at no big scale. It's just
but it
it
was
was still
enough for you to
it
take
was
another
still too
charge.
much. It was too much, because I ended up still catching another charge. But this is what God was with me on this one. I
He was
catch
with
this
you on
charge.
all of them. He was with you on
Yeah. Because
all of them.
I was blessed all them bids. I did. I didn't really do no messed up time in no prisons. Really, I never had any altercations with any
So
people. I
he
kind
kept
of
you even on the
kept me
inside.
covered. I know I have to thank all my aunts, all my loved ones, because I know they was praying for. I know I had a praying family, because you don't go through what I went through and not have
Untouched.
and don't have no serious incidents. So after this we get married. This is after my second bid. We things are going great. We got a nice house. The family comes down. I have this nice wedding, and even I'm still just that, but just a little bit, but still I know now any bit is too much, and I
Any
got
bit is too much. You know,
yeah.
and even after you got married and you catch another charge and you go back in, what makes this the final time for you? What is different for you now this time, where you saying, because you said, well, you never really said that you wasn't going to do it again. You just tried different things, but it sounded like you always went back to doing the same thing, what was familiar. So what is different this time for you?
Well, this time at this point it got to where it was bigger than just saying I'm not gonna do that. And I had to go back and like, man, what is it that I haven't done? This ain't my purpose. What? So I never really said to myself that I had a mental health issue. And so that's what I kind of focused on. I wanted to, focus on the things that I went through mentally that might have me in this zone that I felt like this is what felt me so comfortable with doing this, just disregarding family and friends and support, and said, I'm a hustle. So I went in and evaluated a bunch of stuff. I had mommy daddy issues that I had to resolve. My dad's passed away, but so I had a conversation with my mother, and that was the start of the first help. And then after that, my last bid, I actually got the opportunity to go to another halfway house. And when I got there, I said within myself, I need help. I cannot do this alone.
So this is the
I
first
surrendered.
time.
Yeah, I surrendered.
God, this is the first time you surrendered.
I surrendered.
Said,
I said,
I need help.
I need help.
That is powerful, because that's why God gives us, I love the Lord. That's why he gives us a will. And when you had the will, when your own will kicked in, God was right there for you.
Right.
He was right there. And it's one of the things, the National Institute of Justice says that the United States has the highest reoffending rate in the world. That we have more reoffenders that come out and repeat crimes. It's almost a 44% of criminals released return before the first year out of prison. And it was just like you said, it's because they don't have a plan, or they think they can do it better, or maybe they still attracted, or they just haven't plain old surrendered. They got honest. They still attracted to the money. They just haven't surrendered yet. And even in California being one of the highest at a 67% rate, for men, out of the prison system, it's a 95% prison population for men, and that's a large number. That's a large number. And even in Alabama, they're saying that our Black men are dying. Out of 4 men are dying in Alabama, dying in prison. And most of them are Black. Most of them are Black. So I'm saying all this to say that we ask these questions: what's going on in the family today? What's going on in the home environment today? Our men are removed. God placed our men, the husbands, the man, as the priest of the home. And you remove that aspect, the house crumbles. The house crumbles. And 95% of our men, according to those statistics, is in prison. And even you said before the show that prisons are so filled with people with that's not even violent crimes, that when people do commit violent crimes, they getting out on parole, because the prison system is so stretched with other type of habitual crimes. Yeah. So somebody commit a violent crime like rape or murder, they may end up doing a couple years and getting parole. Like I've seen a person get a gun charge, do time like if he committed murder. If somebody who commit murder get less time. I know it's a lot of circumstances and all that stuff that's involved, but my bottom line is to this, that we just got to start making different decisions, and we can't, it's hard to do that until you know better. And I was so glad to hear you say you got to a point where you wanted to know better. You begin to seek out the help for your mental health. You thought to yourself, there must be a reason why this keeps happening to me. I'm sorry you had to lose 15, almost 16 years. That's a lot of time. That's 5,065 days out of your life. Out of your life. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. And look how God kept you. How he kept you. So tell us what you are doing now to keep yourself on a path of a successful reentry.
Well, one of the first things I did, and I incorporated while I was in Hasbro House, or a transitional center. Um, I have this thing where I reach out to my family support at least once a week and just have a conversation with them, and it also helps me because now if they don't hear from me within a week or so, they be like, "Hey man, what's going on with you?" And that was to help me. So if you talking to me once a week at least, and a lot of time I like to FaceTime so they can see what's going on around me. They remember that I would get ghosts for a while, and that meant they knew what was going on with me. So now I talk with them as frequent, at least no less than once a week, and that helps to keep me on track where I don't, people around me that know. And I told them, I said, man, you see something look off, say something. I mean, really say something. Don't, you know what I mean? And so I do that. That helps a lot. I have the same conversation with my kids, and like
Are you
now,
working?
yeah, I'm working. I work for a company called Bluebird Bus Company. They actually make most of the buses you see all over the United States. I actually weld for them. So I got a job making, this last bid, I actually was able to enter into a small entry welding program. And then the job I got actually welded. I got the opportunity to weld to, learn the trade. Cause I never gave up on learning something while I did my time. And so I'm doing that. I'm working. That's Monday through Friday. I work out. That's another way how I relieve stress and kind of get the pressures of wanting to, what I mean, just keep from the idle time.
And
And
your wife, is she supportive? Because she supported you through the incarceration period.
oh yes, yeah, she's most definitely supportive of me. And just and she's another one that I had a conversation with about, you know, if you see me getting off track, because she's been with me when I've hustled for the majority of the time. So it's easy. I know it's probably easy for her to see it go on and not really say much, or maybe have one conversation. Then when I be like, "Man, I got this. I'm good. Don't worry about it. I got it under control," and dismiss it and not say nothing else. I told her don't allow me to do that.
Carol McMillan said you had a changed mind. Hibachi Muhammad says hello. Uh, and that's what happens. God has to change our mind, and
Right.
I feel like praising him right now just for how he changed your mind and give you desire to want to do something different, to want
Oh,
to
yeah.
live different.
Right. So I'm proud to be in the place that I'm in. It took a while, but it's never too late for things, and that's why I felt like it was important to share the story because I know it's people that's struggling with that. Like I struggle with the things I struggle with, and I had a lot of family support around. I know it's people out there that don't have that, but you still can turn things around.
You still can.
Especially when what I mean, you gotta ask for, like with me, I had to ask for help. I was always used to just taking care of things. I never really just said, "Hey man, can you help me do this?" I would just figure it out, but that wasn't healthy for what I needed to do. I needed to be able to accept help, and that's what my big thing was. What I mean, that was something that a friend of mine once told me that a long time ago. She was like, that's one of your big problems. You just don't you don't like to ask nobody for help. You like to help people, but when somebody want to help you, you be like, "No, I'm good." So now I'm in acceptance of help. I know I need it. I know constantly I need it in every person around me. I know I can learn something from. So I keep a smile on my face. I try not to stress that because I know it's a lot of people in a lot worse situation. When God gave you the opportunity to see another day, make the best of it. Don't spend that day upset about anything. And then, this is a part of I knew a lot of families, a lot of people I helped destroy. Selling drugs, you destroy lives, you destroy families. And so that's a big debt, and you have to pay that back. You have to give back. So I know now I'm trying to repay that debt, and help uplift. You know what I mean? And so that's what and that's what keeps me going.
Moswen, I want to thank you so much for sharing your